Welcome to Subject to Change, Extra Bits with Eric Corey Freed.
Eco Districts is a nonprofit. It started in city of Portland under their Department of Sustainability, but really was a framework for how do you develop regenerative, equitable, sustainable communities. And it's fascinating to me as an architect because normally, for the longest time, I saw each building as a problem to be solved, right? So we're designing this building. We're going to make it great and green and wonderful. But as soon as you kind of zoom out to a neighborhood scale or a district scale, it gives you certain opportunities and advantages that never even occurred to me before as an architect. For example, on your own, you might not be able to put in the most advanced or the most efficient heating and cooling system into one building. It might not pencil out, it might not make sense. But as soon as you zoom out, suddenly you can partner with your neighbors, you can get an economy of scale going, you know, the size of the systems works out better. So now instead of one building trying to solve all the world's problems, you've got 20 buildings, 30 buildings, whatever, working together to do that.
Okay.
Makes a lot more sense. And now you can apply that same thinking to what about issues around equity or resiliency?
The idea of looking beyond the 5 feet from the building.
Yeah.
That is something that is, I'm trying to make that change in my day job now. Just throw DASME under the bus. It is very hard to do that on a public project, a public bid with Wick's law and lowest qualified bidder mentality. And you're right, if you don't pay attention, we had a project that we just we designed and then redesigned because the first design totally ignored the fact that this residence hall was on a central plant system at the college. And it was only through the process and getting people to understand that they had to pay attention to the systems that fed the building. Oh, gee, where's the energy come from? Where's the water come from? You know, that they started to realize that they could do things differently that would not just benefit the building, but set up the campus for a long-term plan to actually transition that central plant. So that broader community-based thinking not only gives you opportunities that you don't have, but stops you from making really stupid mistakes. You know, there's some big mistakes we would have made had we taken that residence hall entirely off that central plant and put in 100 individual little heat pumps. That wouldn't have been good for the campus at all. So that's awesome, the eco districts.
Yeah. But it's also as much an approach and a mindset to solving some of these problems. So I'm applying eco districts thinking to college campuses, which makes for an obvious, clear district with a boundary. I'm doing it for innovation districts,
nice,
which are literally districts, but an assemblage of tenants more than anything, right? That obviously want to see the area improve. We're doing it for healthcare facilities, that same approach. So it just really changed my thinking in some profound ways. And I think that's kind of what happened with my career, was me kind of getting expanding my thinking at each stage, right? So and being open to it. Maybe that's part of it too, but just, you know, I'll be the first to admit when my thinking was kind of dumb or behind on something. And, you know, I started as an architect designing buildings, kind of asking, well, that's dumb, why do we do it that way? And not really liking the answers I was getting. And so that never left. I think just that stubborn, like pesky, like questioning guy. That's always been
saying why
the pain in the butt guy. Yeah. Why?
I admire that though. I find it hard. I find it difficult. Like when I don't know the answer to something, I do find it difficult to kind of insert myself and say, well, what's the why to that? It's easy for me to kind of wait until maybe after a meeting or something and then ask that question like to one person later. It's difficult to be in the room and do that, like a full room of people. I find that difficult.
Yeah, I guess.
What's admirable is you're asking the question, even if it is to just one person, at least you're asking the question. There are a lot of people who know there's a question they should be asking and they just don't ask it.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy.
what's the biggest initiative right now? What should we all be focusing on, learning more about, and moving forward with in our day-to-day lives, or attempting to?
Well, this is hard because, you know, on the one hand, as an architect and sustainability person, I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm interested in material health and its effect on indoor air quality and its occupants. I'm interested in water, which I feel has been kind of a little overlooked lately because of all the discussions around carbon. You know, I'm interested in you know, urban communities and equity and resiliency and so forth. But then just because of urgency, the answer has got to be around carbon, and specifically the embodied carbon that goes into the buildings, which, you know, we spent decades really fixated on operational energy. I mean, myself included.
Right.
And we're good at that, right? We can make very high performance, low EUI buildings that perform at a reasonable amount of energy that we can then offset with solar. What we're not so good at yet is, what about all the upfront energy that went into making that, the embodied carbon? And that's where these tools like EC3 that I mentioned, or Tally, really come into play, because we didn't even have them 5 years ago. And now we're able to get to a level of detail and understanding that informs the design process and our decision making. And so the embodied carbon is half the carbon story of the building, and we've largely ignored it up until recently. And because of the time value of carbon, in other words, because when you build the building, that's where all the upfront carbon is counted, and then the operational stuff, you know, takes place over the next 50 years. Focusing on the embodied carbon is critical to achieving all of our climate goals. So we, just because of urgency, I have to say that's where our focus lies, right? Get into the embodied carbon of your building, and you don't have to be perfect. Just start tracking it, measuring it. Just start. Yeah, just have the conversation.
Thanks for joining us for some tech with Eric Corey Fried.